Welcome to the deep dive. Um, have you ever had that sudden, that almost surreal feeling when the autopilot of your daily life just abruptly turns off?
Oh, absolutely.
I actually had this exact feeling last week. I drove all the way to the grocery store, parked the car, turned off the engine, and suddenly realized I had absolutely no active memory of the drive.
Yeah, highway hypnosis. It happens to the best of us.
It is a genuinely terrifying moment. You realize your brain just ran the driving script, while your conscious mind was completely spaced out. The familiar suddenly feels entirely foreign. And that exact jarring shift in perspective is the focus of our deep dive today.
It's a deeply universal experience, and yet, it is incredibly difficult to put into words without sounding a bit unhinged.
Right.
But the source material we are examining today manages to capture that exact psychological glitch perfectly. We're looking at two deeply atmospheric philosophical essays by the writer Pedro Mala.
Titled Boxin' Still Here.
Exactly. And what he's doing in these texts is essentially a masterclass in phenomenology, which is just the study of conscious experience from the first-person point of view. He's forcing us to examine how we actually perceive the spaces we move through every single day.
Okay, let's unpack this because we're going to do something a little different today.
We are.
Instead of tackling these two essays one by one, chronologically, our mission for this deep dive is to weave them together simultaneously.
I like this approach.
Yeah, we're going to explore Malha's unified vision of our daily routines. He builds this slowly dawning realization about the inaudible infrastructure of daily life. He starts with the premise that our houses are essentially just containers, just boxes.
But the real twist is that even when we leave our houses, even when we step outside to get some fresh air or escape, we are not actually leaving. We are simply stepping into structurally larger containers.
Bigger box.
Bigger boxes. And by analyzing both essays side by side, we can track the complete psychological journey. We move from the moment we wake up to the moment we step outside, all the way to that eventual existential realization that follows us back home.
Because Mala is mapping the architecture of our consciousness just as much as he's mapping a physical neighborhood.
Precisely.
So to start us off, I want you, the listener, to really think about your morning today. When you woke up, did you actually see your surroundings? Or did you just move through them?
Most people just move through them.
Because Mala opens the essay Still Here by perfectly capturing the absolute blindness of our morning routines. He describes waking up in a room that is so deeply familiar, you don't even need to look at it to know where you are.
He paints this incredibly quiet, fragile picture. The ceiling holds its place. The light slowly enters the room, touching the wall, the floor.
It's that delicate moment right before the day officially begins.
Right, where nothing is actually required of you yet. The day is just waiting there, out in the hallway, ready to demand your attention.
And the specific details he uses are wonderfully mundane. He writes about lying still for just a moment longer than needed, simply because getting up starts a chain reaction that won't stop until you go back to sleep.
Which is so relatable.
And then, out of pure habit, you reach for the screen. The phone lights up the room, a little too bright for the hour, and you check for, as Malha puts it, messages or the absence of them.
It's just those small confirmations that the day has already started somewhere else without you.
Yeah. And then you look around the room, and what do you actually register? Malha points out a chair draped with clothes that are not quite folded, not quite discarded.
We all have that chair.
Everyone has the closed chair. And there is an unfinished cup left on a table, not out of carelessness, but simply because there was absolutely no reason to move it.
What is crucial to understand about the psychology of Mala's spaces here is the concept of habituation. Our brains are incredibly efficient at filtering out sensory information that hasn't changed.
Right. If it's not a threat or something new, we just ignore it.
Exactly. We do not look at our rooms because our brains have decided we don't need to. The floor sounds the same. The door handle turns with the same weight.
I get that we operate on habit, but
Yeah.
let me play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't there a certain beauty, or at least a necessary utility, in that autopilot?
How do you mean?
Well, if I had to consciously process every single step from my bed to the bathroom, calculate the distance, and analyze the friction of the floorboards, I would be entirely exhausted by 7 in the morning. Does Malha view this sensory blindness as a modern tragedy or just a biological reality?
That raises an important question, and it's where a lot of readers misinterpret the text. Malha doesn't frame this autopilot as a tragic flaw of modern life or some failure of mindfulness.
Okay.
It is simply where life happens. He describes a space built on what he calls small movements and silences that just repeat. Conversations begin and end. Your perception is built on physical memory.
And that memory is the foundation that allows the rest of your day to build itself without needing to be constantly questioned.
Precisely. It's functional.
So we have this perfectly functional, highly habituated little container of a morning routine. But that autopilot doesn't just shut off when you leave the house.
Not at all.
When we look at how Malha explores the outside world in the essay box, you realize that stepping out your front door isn't the escape we often pretend it is. You open the door, it makes that small, familiar click, and you step outside.
But stepping outside doesn't actually feel like leaving anything behind. The air just meets you. The street is already there, waiting.
Because the environment outside is just as heavily saturated with routine as the bedroom. Your brain is applying that exact same habituation to the neighborhood.
You are walking down a street you have walked down 1,000 times before.
The pavement runs ahead in a straight line. The concrete slabs rise and fall exactly where they always do. The road bends where it always bends. Even the parked cars are just sitting exactly where they fit.
You aren't thinking about where you were going. Your body simply walks the route.
And just like the bedroom, the houses you pass do not need to be actively processed. You might notice a curtain shift slightly out of the corner of your eye or hear a door close somewhere behind you, but you don't really look.
You are moving through a space that does not require your active attention. Your feet just land where they always land.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Here we go.
In both of these essays, right in the middle of this totally mundane walk down the street, Malha describes the exact moment where the psychological glitch happens. You are walking, your pace hasn't changed, but your attention settles differently.
The habituation cracks.
Yes, you stop seeing the individual houses.
That shift in perception is the fulcrum of his entire philosophy in these texts. When we synthesize Box and Still Here, we see this phenomenon described from two slightly different angles.
Right.
In Box, he notes that your eyes stop resting on any single piece of architecture. You stop noticing the unique paint colors, the slightly open windows, the separate garden paths.
Instead, your eye starts following the continuous line that the houses make together. The boundaries between them just start to blur.
It's a fascinating visual shift.
It's almost like a magic eye poster, where you unfocus your vision to see the hidden image.
That's a great analogy, because in Still Here, he describes how roofs and windows blur into a shared outline. The differences soften. What once appeared as totally separate, distinct homes with their own individual identities begins to settle into something entirely repeated.
A splash of color or a slight architectural variation might still be there, but it no longer interrupts the broader pattern. The structures just share the same outline.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? When all those individual details fall away, what is the underlying structure he's actually seeing?
What's fascinating here is how Malha zooms out to describe this massive macro pattern. The houses don't stand alone. They sit next to each other in an unbroken chain.
An unbroken chain that extends further than you can see from where you are standing.
Right. You realize that roads connect to more roads. Rows of houses connect to more rows of houses. It doesn't even need to be perfectly identical to hold its shape. It is just this massive, quiet repetition of form.
He says that repetition doesn't need to be exact to carry on. It just spreads. And that brings us to the central, honestly, quite unsettling realization of this entire deep dive.
Which is?
The core concept here is that leaving your house does not actually mean leaving the container.
That is the illusion he shatters right there. We are conditioned to think of inside and outside as binary opposites. Inside is the container, outside is freedom, or at least open space.
But Malha argues that the outside is just a structurally larger, more complex version of the exact same geometry.
It's still a box.
It's still a box. And the imagery he uses to detail this realization is so incredibly vivid. Because when you are looking at this unbroken line of houses, this endless quiet repetition, you suddenly realize something terrifying.
You realize you aren't actually an outside observer looking at a nice view of a neighborhood.
No, you are inside it. The line doesn't sit in front of you anymore. It surrounds you. You are just another component, another moving part within the arrangement.
Let's really analyze the profound sense of smallness this creates. Each one of those houses in the line is its own sealed environment.
Holding its own complete world.
Exactly. Rooms, objects, voices, people living out their entire complex lives.
Just like the bedroom you woke up in. The unfinished cup, the clothes on the chair, every single house has its own version of that.
And each sealed environment is entirely unaware of the others in the line. From the inside, they feel like the center of the universe.
But from your new perspective out on the street, none of them stand out.
And worse, this massive, endless pattern does not need you, as he explicitly notes and still there. Still here, the pattern continues whether you are looking at it or not.
It would continue exactly the same way if you weren't there at all.
Nothing in this vast arrangement depends on your observation to exist.
I want you to really visualize that for a second. Imagine pulling up a satellite map of your own neighborhood right now. Zoom out until your house is just a tiny speck among thousands of other specks.
It's a humbling thought.
It is. Now imagine watching your own little blue dot moving down the sidewalk, navigating through this vast repeating grid of identical structures that just go on and on and on until they hit the horizon. It's dizzying. It completely strips away the ego.
We constantly cast ourselves as the main characters of our environment, treating the neighborhood as a backdrop to our personal narrative.
But Malha's saying, no, you're just part of the backdrop too.
You are walking through it, subject to the exact same physical laws and spatial repetition as the pavement slabs and the parked cars.
And it's in that exact moment of realization when the immense scale and the total indifference of the system finally hits you that both essays arrive at the exact same intrusive thought.
Just 4 words.
Standing completely alone in the text, what is the point?
That is the existential climax of the work. You realize you are a tiny piece in an infinite, uncaring system, and that question inevitably bubbles up. What is the point?
It's heavy.
It strongly mirrors Albert Camus' concept of the absurd, that profound tension that arises when our human desire for meaning and significance crashes headfirst into the cold, silent, and completely indifferent universe.
Or in this case, an indifferent suburban street.
Exactly.
But what is truly brilliant about Malha's writing is how he handles this philosophical peak. Because he doesn't handle it the way you expect him to.
Not at all. In a standard Hollywood narrative, this is the moment the protagonist breaks down. They fall to their knees in the rain or they throw their phone in a river.
They have some massive life-altering epiphany.
Right, that changes the trajectory of their life. But here, nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
The question just sits there in the air. It does not open into anything larger. It does not demand to be resolved.
He says the thought feels almost too simple, too complete for what is actually in front of you. You wonder for a split second if you should stop walking. Just stand entirely still in the middle of the pavement and refuse to participate in the repetition.
But the thought passes. You keep walking.
There is literally no place for stopping here. Modern society and the momentum of our daily routines doesn't really allow for a prolonged existential crisis on a Tuesday morning. You still have places to be.
The environment does not care that you just question the very nature of your reality. And that lack of an answer is the point.
That is easily the most brilliant contrast in the whole piece. You have this massive internal wave of existential dread, but external reality doesn't even flinch.
Malha paints this beautifully. A car is parked halfway onto the pavement. A garden gate is left slightly open.
The street turns slightly ahead. The world does not stop or rearrange itself just because you asked a profound question. Nothing in front of you offers an answer.
You just follow the bend in the road without thinking, relying on that physical memory we talked about earlier.
Because the physical world is entirely immune to our philosophical crises. The same shapes continue, the same spacing, the same quiet repetition.
The question stays where it is without instruction. It doesn't change the friction of the pavement or the weight of the air.
So you keep walking, and eventually you turn back. Malha describes the return home in both essays, and it happens with that same feeling of inevitability.
You don't turn back because you've conquered the profound question.
Or because you've achieved some great clarity. You turn back simply because that's where you were going anyway. Your body knows the route back to the start.
The physical autopilot simply re-engages.
You reach your door. You open it exactly the way you always do. The handle turns with the same familiar weight. It clicks with the same sound. And you step inside.
Back into the box.
Back into the box. The room is totally unchanged from when you left it this morning. The light has shifted across the floor a bit as the sun has moved, but the unfinished cup and the chair with the clothes are sitting exactly where they were. Everything functions exactly as it did.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, we see the true impact of the essays. The physical space of the house hasn't changed a single bit, but the feeling of the house has completely transformed.
It doesn't settle the same way. It feels different.
Before the walk, the house was a private sanctuary. It was the center of your known world, insulated by your habits. Now the room no longer feels separate from the outside world you just walked through.
It sits within that infinite line.
You have realized that your quiet, intimate little morning routine is just taking place inside one tiny cell in an endless honeycomb of other cells.
The spatial repetition of the neighborhood, the way the houses extend without needing to stop that reality, has followed you back inside.
It's like you've seen the underlying matrix of your own neighborhood and you simply can't unsee it.
But this is how Mala wraps up this incredible narrative arc. And you still have to live your life. You go about your day. You do the same small actions, moving from one room to the next, picking things up, setting them down.
The existential question, that lingering what is the point, retreats. It sinks just beneath the surface of what is happening.
It doesn't interrupt your ability to function, and it doesn't demand an immediate answer anymore. But it also never fully leaves.
It sits there, a quiet hum beneath the mundane actions.
You wake up. You move through the rooms. You step outside. You come back. Nothing answers the question. But as Mala says at the very end, and still you are here, still inside it. The same box, whether you look at it or not.
It is a stunning, quiet kind of surrender to the reality of our environment. We are shaped by the structures we inhabit, and recognizing that doesn't free us from them. It just makes us aware of the geometry.
It really is a masterful piece of writing. So, to summarize the incredible journey of this deep dive, Mala takes us from the comforting, unthinking habituation of our daily morning routines and pushes us out the front door.
He walks us right into the jarring, almost dizzying realization of the massive, repeating spatial structures we actually live inside.
He forces us to confront our own smallness in an indifferent system, hands us the entirely unanswerable question of what it all means, and then he just sends us right back to our kitchens to finish making our morning coffee.
It is a profound exploration of the physical spaces we accept, without question. But I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to ponder today.
Let's hear it.
Something that builds on Malha's essays, but pushes his phenomenology into the modern age. We've spent this entire time analyzing how our physical neighborhoods are these infinite repeating structures that we wander through on autopilot. But what about the digital spaces we retreat into?
Oh, wow. The screens. We touch them the second we wake up.
Think about it. When the physical environment feels too small, or when that existential dread creeps in and we want to actively ignore it, what is our immediate reflex?
We pick up our phones?
We pick up our phones to escape, we scroll. But when we do that, are we actually leaving the container? Or are we just stepping into a massive digital neighborhood?
That is such an interesting way to frame it.
Think of the feed on your smartphone. You are swiping past an infinite, unbroken line of identical little squares. Each square holds someone else's life, someone else's room, someone else's voice.
And the feed extends forever in both directions.
It shares the exact same outline, the exact same quiet, relentless repetition as the houses on a street. And most importantly, that endless digital line of content continues completely without you.
It doesn't need your observation to exist.
Exactly. So when you look at your screen tonight to escape the routine, ask yourself, did you actually escape the structure, or did you just find an infinitely bigger one?
That thought alone is going to keep me up tonight. And the next time I walk down my street, I know I'm not going to be able to look at the houses the same way. The habituation is officially broken. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As you go about your day, pay attention to the door handles, the pavement slabs, and the quiet repetition all around you. Keep looking closely at the spaces you move through today. Catch you next time.